The rancher waited for a mail-order bride, but identical twins stepped off the wagon. Dust swirled in the street as townsfolk gasped. Two women, the same face, the same eyes, each clutching his name in trembling hands. Whispers filled the air. Was it a blessing or a scandal? He only wanted one bride. But now, one gentle as spring rain, the other fierce as a wild colt. Both claimed the promise he made. Then came the papers, the forged contracts, the railroad man circling like a wolf in the night. Trust shattered, and a wedding halted at the altar. Two sisters bound by blood, yet one might be branded a liar, the other a thief. And the rancher stands between love, betrayal, and the ruin of his land. When the truth splits a town in half, who will he believe? And what will be left standing when the dust finally settles? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more through the window of Foster's boarding house. The setting sun painted long shadows across the wooden floorboards. Thomas Danner sat stiffly between the two identical young women, his untouched plate of beef stew growing cold before him. The dining room buzzed with whispered conversations and sidelong glances from other patrons. Their own meals forgotten in the drama unfolding before them. Amanda, seated to his right, folded her hands in her lap, her blue eyes downcast. The gentle way she carried herself reminded Thomas of a dove, quiet and graceful. Her sister Eliza, on his left, sat straight-backed with her chin lifted, meeting the stares of onlookers with unwavering determination. Perhaps Thomas cleared his throat, his voice barely above a whisper. We should start at the beginning. The letters, I have them right here, both sisters said in unison, then glanced at each other across the table. Amanda reached into her reticule first, withdrawing a stack of carefully preserved papers tied with a blue ribbon. Her fingers trembled slightly as she untied the bow. These arrived starting 3 months ago. Mr. Danner, each one spoke of your ranch, your faith, and your desire for a wife who could help make a real home. Eliza produced her own letters, bound with a leather cord. And these came to me. Speaking of the same ranch, the same faith, but seeking a woman who could ride and work alongside you, who wasn't afraid of hard labor. Thomas's face flushed deeper as he studied both sets of correspondence. The handwriting on all the letters matched his own, down to the way he curved his Y's and crossed his T's. But the words he'd never written, about wanting a gentle homemaker or a rough-riding ranch hand. His letters had been simple, honest accounts of his life and hopes. The preacher's wife, seated at a nearby table, leaned forward with concern etched on her weathered face. Her knitting lay forgotten in her lap as she watched the scene unfold. There's more, Amanda said softly. She withdrew another letter, this one creased and worn from many readings. This one arrived last week, confirming the marriage arrangement and providing funds for my journey west. I received the same, Eliza added, producing an identical letter and a bank draft for the same amount. Thomas's hands shook as he examined both documents. These aren't my writing, he said finally, his voice hoarse. I sent one letter, just one, with travel money to Miss Amanda Sterling in Boston. I never, he broke off, running a hand through his graying hair. But I am Amanda Sterling, both women said together, then stared at each other in growing dismay. We're both Amanda Sterling, the quieter sister explained, her voice barely carrying across the table. Amanda Eliza and Eliza Amanda Sterling. Our parents, she swallowed hard, they passed when we were small. We were raised by different aunts, but we've written to each other all our lives, though we haven't seen each other since we were 10, Eliza added, reaching across Thomas to squeeze her sister's hand. When your first letter arrived, I wrote to Amanda right away, but my letter must have crossed paths with hers to me, both of us sharing the same news that we'd been corresponding with a Thomas Danner. The dining room had grown silent. every ear straining to catch the conversation. Thomas noticed Mrs. Foster, the boarding house owner, hovering near their table with a pot of coffee she'd been refilling for the past 10 minutes, though no cup needed topping off. But the later letters, Thomas said, spreading them across the checked tablecloth. The ones asking for specific qualities, making promises, these aren't mine. Someone else wrote these, steering you both here. His jaw tightened as understanding dawned. Someone who knew you were twins, who knew exactly what to write to appeal to each of you. Amanda's face paled. Our cousin, Herbert. He worked at the mail office in Boston. He always resented that our aunts inherited father's estate instead of him. He's the only one who knew about both of us, Liza confirmed, her free hand clenching into a fist. He must have intercepted your original letter, Thomas, and decided to. She broke off, color rising in her cheeks. To make me look like a fool, Thomas finished grimly. Or worse, a scoundrel promising marriage to 2 women at once. Either way, it would destroy my reputation in the territory. The preacher's wife rose from her table and approached, her kind face set with determination. Now see here, she said quietly but firmly. There's been no harm done that can't be mended. These young ladies are victims of a cruel trick, same as you, Thomas Danner. And they've traveled too far to be sent back without a fair chance at the life they came seeking. Thomas looked between the sisters, one, gentle and composed despite her obvious distress. The other fierce and protective, yet with tears brightening her eyes. Both had trusted his written words enough to journey across the country. Both had been betrayed by their own kin. And now they sat in a strange town. Their reputations as much at risk as his own. The sound of boots on the boardwalk outside made them all turn. More townspeople were gathering at the windows. Drawn by the spreading news of the scandal at Foster's, Thomas could see the blacksmith's broad grin. Could hear the ripple of speculation moving through the crowd. Amanda's shoulders slumped. We should leave, she whispered. Take the next stage back east. We never meant to cause such trouble. No, Thomas said, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. The preacher's wife is right. You've done nothing wrong, either of you. And I won't have you forced out of town by gossip and speculation. He stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Mrs. Foster, I'll need 2 rooms for the ladies, if you please. And tomorrow, he looked between Amanda and Eliza, seeing both strength and vulnerability in their matching faces. Tomorrow, we'll begin sorting out this tangle properly. With dignity and respect for all concerned. The preacher's wife nodded approvingly. I'll help get the girls settled, she offered. And perhaps we can all meet for breakfast to discuss matters further. Away from prying eyes, she shot a stern look at the window watchers, who had the grace to step back from the glass. As Mrs. Foster hurried off to prepare rooms, Thomas turned to face the sisters. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Sorry for the deception you've endured, and sorry I can't immediately make this right. But I give you my word as a God-fearing man that I'll do everything in my power to help you find your way here. Whether that leads to marriage or not. Amanda smiled tremulously, while Eliza's chin lifted with renewed determination. In that moment, despite their different manners, Thomas could see the same courage in both of them, the courage it had taken to travel west on the strength of written promises, and the courage it would take to face whatever came next. The dining room slowly emptied as the evening deepened, though Thomas knew the story would be all over town by morning. He watched as the preacher's wife led the sisters upstairs, their matching profiles highlighted by lamplight. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, he had done what he could to preserve their dignity and his honor. Outside, a warm spring breeze stirred the dust on Main Street, carrying with it the scent of sage and promise. The flowers he'd brought to the stage stop lay forgotten on a side table, their petals beginning to curl in the evening air. Thomas Danner hitched his team to the wagon as dusk painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. The day's heat lingered in the packed earth of Silver Creek's main street, raising dust that settled on his Sunday coat. He'd already sent word to his foreman about the unexpected situation. Though he couldn't bring himself to explain it fully in the hastily scrawled note. "It's mighty kind of you to arrange transport," Amanda said softly as she approached the wagon. Her carpetbag clutched tight. The preacher's wife had helped both sisters freshen up after supper, but worry still creased Amanda's brow. Eliza strode up behind her, boots clicking against the wooden sidewalk. "We could have stayed at the boarding house," she said, though her voice held more uncertainty than challenge. Thomas shook his head as he helped them up onto the wagon seat. Folk in town have loose tongues and long memories. Best we sort this out away from prying eyes. He couldn't help noticing how the sisters unconsciously mirrored each other's movements as they settled onto the broad seat, smoothing their skirts in unison. The wagon wheels creaked as they left town behind. Crickets had begun their evening chorus, and a cool breeze carried the scent of sage and prairie grass. Thomas kept his eyes fixed on the darkening road, all too aware of the awkward silence between them. Amanda's quiet voice finally broke through the steady clip-clop of hooves. "I suppose you'd like to know why I answered your advertisement, Mr. Danner." She twisted her hands in her lap. "I was working as a house servant in Boston, watching fine ladies destroy each other with gossip and schemes. I prayed for somewhere I could build a life founded on honest faith and hard work." Her words carried the weight of long-held dreams. "When I read your letter about wanting a God-fearing wife to help make your house a home, seemed like an answer to those prayers." Thomas frowned. "I never wrote specifically about, and I," Eliza cut in, "replied because you wrote of needing someone who could ride fence and help with the cattle." She sat straighter, pride evident in her bearing. "I've worked in stables since I was 12. Horses speak clearer than most people, and the thought of open sky instead of city walls called to my soul." The sisters stared at each other across the wagon seat, realization dawning in their identical faces. "You never told me you were riding to a rancher," they said in perfect unison. Then fell silent, hurt blooming in their expressions. Thomas cleared his throat. "Those letters you receive, they weren't from me. I wrote one simple advertisement, seeking a companion who shared my values. Nothing more." The wagon swayed as they crossed a shallow creek, water splashing against the wooden wheels. "Seems your cousin did more damage than we first thought, crafting words to draw you both west." Ahead, lamplight glowed in the windows of the ranch house. Thomas's foreman, Joe Martinez, stood on the porch, his weathered face curious as he watched the wagon approach. The Mexican man had worked the ranch for 15 years, becoming more friend than employee. And Thomas knew he could trust his discretion. "Senator Thomas," Joe called as they pulled up to the house. "I've aired out the guest rooms like you asked." His dark eyes took in the identical young women with careful neutrality. Sarah left some fresh bread and beans warming on the stove before she headed home. Thomas helped the sisters down from the wagon. "Much obliged, Joe. We'll manage from here." The foreman nodded and melted away into the gathering darkness, headed for his cabin near the barn. Inside, the kitchen glowed with welcoming warmth. A pot of beans simmered on the back of the stove, and the scent of fresh-baked bread filled the air. Thomas lit additional lamps while the sisters stood awkwardly near the door, their carpetbags still in hand. "I've had 2 rooms prepared upstairs," he said, keeping his voice steady and professional. "We'll sort everything out proper like tomorrow, but for tonight, we'll have clean beds and privacy." He gestured to the stove. "Though perhaps some supper first. It's been a long day for all of us." The sisters settled at the worn kitchen table while Thomas served up bowls of beans and cut thick slices of still warm bread. The domestic routine helped ease some of the tension. but it returned as they ate in silence. "I should have been chosen," Amanda said suddenly, her voice gentle but firm. "I responded to Mr. Danner's advertisement first, before Herbert began his deception. My letter was genuine, seeking a life of faith and family." Eliza set down her spoon with a sharp click. "You don't know that you were first? I wrote as soon as I saw the advertisement in the Boston Chronicle. And I was just as genuine in my desire to build a new life here." "Ladies," Thomas interrupted, "there's no need to. I've always dreamed of making a real home." Amanda continued, her cheeks flushing. "Of raising children in the fear of the Lord. Of supporting a husband in his work. And I've always longed for honest work under open skies," Eliza countered. "To use the skills God gave me instead of being confined to parlors and propriety." Thomas pushed back from the table, his chair scraping against the plank floor. "It's been a trying day for all of us. Perhaps we should seek our beds and face these questions fresh in the morning." The sisters fell silent, though tensions still crackled between them. Thomas showed them to their rooms, ensuring they had clean linens and water for washing. "Sleep well," he said awkwardly, before retreating to his study down the hall. In the quiet of the book-lined room, Thomas sank into his leather chair and bowed his head. "Lord," he whispered, "I don't rightly know what to make of this situation. These are good women, both of them caught in someone else's cruel game. Guide me in doing what's right by them and by the truth." As he rose to seek his own bed, he heard muffled voices from the sisters' rooms. Despite their earlier argument, he could hear concern and care in their hushed tones. Whatever strain this situation put on their relationship, the bond between them remained unbroken. Thomas lay awake long into the night, listening to the familiar sounds of his ranch cattle lowing in the distance, the creak of the windmill, coyotes calling across the prairie. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, all he could do was trust in God's guidance and the power of truth to light the way forward. The morning sun crept over the eastern hills as roosters announced the dawn with their persistent crowing. Dew sparkled on the grass, and wisps of fog clung to the creek bottom where cattle grazed. Thomas stood on his porch, coffee cup in hand, watching as Amanda and Eliza emerged from the house, both wearing borrowed aprons over their travel dresses near the barn. His ranch hands tried to look busy while stealing glances at the identical young women. Pete and Charlie whispered behind cupped hands as they leaned on their pitchforks, while Joe Martinez simply shook his head and continued working. Amanda headed straight for the chicken coop, gathering eggs with practiced ease. Her gentle cooing seemed to calm the usually fussy hens. Meanwhile, Eliza strode toward the well, her movements confident as she worked the pump handle. "Need any help with that?" Pete called out, but Eliza just smiled and hefted the heavy bucket without apparent effort. The kitchen soon filled with warm, inviting smells as Amanda worked at the cook stove. Her fingers moved quickly, mixing flour and buttermilk for biscuits while bacon sizzled in the cast-iron skillet. Thomas couldn't help but notice how naturally she moved through his kitchen, as if she'd always belonged there. A commotion outside drew him to the window. A young calf had slipped through a gap in the corral and was heading toward the creek. Before anyone could react, Eliza snatched up a coiled rope from the fence post. With fluid grace, she swung the lariat and sent it sailing through the air. The loop settled perfectly around the calf's neck. "Well, I'll be," Charlie muttered, clearly impressed. Even Joe paused in his work to watch as Eliza expertly guided the calf back to its anxious mother. Thomas rubbed his jaw, troubled despite his admiration. Both women showed clear talents that would benefit the ranch, but the situation grew more complicated by the hour. Having two unmarried women under his roof invited gossip, no matter how innocent the circumstances. After breakfast, Thomas saddled his bay gelding. "I need to ride into town," he announced. "I aim to speak with Preacher Davidson about our ... situation." The sisters exchanged glances but said nothing as he mounted up. The morning was warming quickly. and dust puffed beneath his horse's hooves as they trotted toward town. He found Preacher Davidson in his study, surrounded by books and papers. The older man listened carefully as Thomas explained the predicament, his weathered face thoughtful. "A delicate situation indeed," the preacher said finally. "These young women appear to be victims of deception. Yet their presence in your home could spark unfortunate speculation." He steepled his fingers. "You must act honorably, Thomas. Give time and prayer a chance to reveal God's plan. The truth will emerge if we're patient." Thomas nodded, though his heart remained troubled. "I reckon you're right. But how long can I properly house them both?" "My wife has offered to take them in if needed," the preacher replied, "though I sense they might be safer from gossip out at your ranch than here in town." When Thomas returned home, he found the sisters by the water trough, their voices raised in argument. He dismounted quickly, concerned about what he might find. "I responded first," Amanda was saying, her usually gentle voice tight with frustration. "My letter clearly stated my intentions to be a proper wife." "Your intentions don't make your claim any stronger than mine," Eliza shot back. "I have just as much right." Their quarrel was interrupted by a startled calf, which crashed through the water trough between them. Water sprayed everywhere, soaking both sisters. For a moment, they stood in shocked silence, dripping and staring at each other. Then, simultaneously, they burst into laughter. "Oh, Eliza, look at your hair." Amanda giggled, reaching out to brush wet strands from her sister's face. "Yours is worse," Eliza chuckled, wringing water from her skirt. "Just like when we were little and fell in the mill pond." Thomas felt something in his chest ease at the sound of their laughter. Whatever strain this situation put on their relationship, their sisterly bond remained strong. That evening, Thomas shared the preacher's counsel over a supper of beef stew and cornbread. "We'll give it time," he said, carefully. "Let prayer guide us to the truth of things." Amanda nodded, her face serene in the lamplight. "That seems wise. We can't let this situation damage our faith or our family bonds, or the ranch work that needs doing," Elisa added practically. "I noticed your north fence needs mending." Before Thomas could respond, hoofbeats sounded in the yard. Joe appeared in the doorway, holding a thick envelope. "Ryder just brought this from town," he said. "Express packet from Boston." Thomas accepted the envelope, noting the legal office's return address. The sisters watched intently as he broke the seal and began reading. His face grew increasingly troubled as he scanned the documents. "What is it?" Amanda asked softly. Thomas looked up, his expression grave. "These are legal papers. About a prior marriage contract." He glanced between the identical faces, both now pale with shock. "According to this document, one of you is already legally bound to marry another man back east." Silence fell heavy in the kitchen, broken only by the ticking of the mantel clock and the distant lowing of cattle. The revelation hung between them like storm clouds, promising more turmoil ahead. Amanda's hands trembled as she reached for the papers. How can that be possible?" Eliza stood so abruptly, her chair scraped against the floor. "Let me see those documents," she demanded, her voice unsteady despite her commanding tone. Thomas handed over the papers, watching as both sisters bent their heads over the legal writing, their faces mirror images of confusion and distress. The lamplight cast dancing shadows on the wall behind them, like the shadows of uncertainty now falling across all their futures. Thomas held the legal document closer to the oil lamp, squinting at the elaborate script. The flame cast dancing shadows across the kitchen table where Amanda and Eliza sat, their faces identical masks of shock and confusion. Outside, a coyote's lonely call echoed through the darkening evening. "This makes no sense," Thomas muttered. Turning the page, Says here, one of you entered into a marriage contract with a Mr. James Whitaker of Boston 3 months ago. That's impossible. Amanda's voice trembled. I've never even heard that name before. Eliza leaned forward, her face tight with concentration. Wait, let me see the lawyer's signature. She traced her finger along the bottom of the page, then straightened suddenly. Harrison Blake. I know that name. Thomas looked up sharply. You do? Yes, and not in a good way. Eliza's eyes flashed with anger. When I worked at Maxwell's stables in Boston, Blake tried to swindle Mr. Maxwell with forged property documents. He's known for such schemes. Amanda reached for her sister's hand. Are you certain? Absolutely. The stable hands used to call him Snake Blake because of how he slithered out of trouble. Eliza's grip tightened on the paper. This document is likely as false as his character. Thomas rubbed his jaw, studying both women. Amanda's gentle face showed only distress, while Eliza's features burned with righteous indignation. Yet doubt gnawed at his mind like a persistent wolf. He'd been deceived before, and the cost had been dear. I'll need to verify this, he said finally, folding the document carefully. First light, I'm riding to town to show the preacher. Sleep proved elusive that night. Thomas tossed in his bed, haunted by memories of past betrayals mixing with fresh uncertainties. When the first gray light of dawn crept through his window, he was already dressed and heading to the stable. The morning air held a bite as he rode toward town. Preacher Davidson was in his garden, already pulling weeds despite the early hour. He straightened as Thomas dismounted, brushing dirt from his hands. Trouble sleeping, Brother Danner? Thomas wordlessly handed over the document. The preacher adjusted his spectacles, reading carefully while Thomas paced the garden path. Finally, he looked up with troubled eyes. These legal terms seem irregular, he said slowly. And this Harrison Blake, his reputation has reached even our small town. None too favorable. Then you agree it might be false? I do. The preacher's face grew grave. But Thomas, whether true or false, this document is dangerous. Gossip about such matters can destroy reputations faster than a prairie fire. Those young women's good names hang in the balance. Thomas's stomach clenched. He hadn't considered how rumors of a scandal might affect the sisters' futures. What should I do? Proceed with caution and prayer, the preacher advised. Watch and wait. The truth has a way of rising to the surface like cream in fresh milk. When Thomas returned to the ranch, he found Amanda in the kitchen with Cookie, the elderly ranch cook. She was showing him a new way to make biscuits rise higher. Her movements gentle and patient as she demonstrated the technique. Cookie, who usually growled at any interference in his domain, watched with surprising attention. Through the window, Thomas spotted Eliza riding along the north fence line with Joe Martinez, pointing out loose posts that needed attention. Her seat in the saddle was natural, and she handled her mount with easy confidence. Both women worked through the morning, each in their own way. Amanda moved between kitchen and garden, humming hymns as she preserved vegetables and mended shirts. Eliza helped the hands repair fencing, her laughter carrying across the pasture when one of the younger cowboys got tangled in his own rope. Thomas watched it all, wanting to trust yet held back by caution. Both sisters showed such sincerity in their work, such natural belonging to ranch life. But the shadow of that document hung over everything like a thundercloud. As evening approached, the clip-clop of horses announced a buggy arriving. The preacher's wife stepped down, her kind face concerned, as she greeted Thomas. I thought perhaps we might talk, she said, following him onto the porch. They sat in the gathering dusk, watching fireflies rise from the grass. This situation troubles you deeply, she observed after a moment. Thomas nodded. I can't afford to be wrong again. The ranch, my reputation, and your heart. She asked gently, He fell silent, remembering his late wife's betrayal. The pain still sharp after all these years. Thomas, the preacher's wife, continued. Sometimes the path of Christian mercy means taking risks. Those young women need patience and understanding while the truth unfolds. But how can I know who to trust? She smiled. Trust comes first from above. The rest follows in God's time. The conversation stayed with Thomas as he bid her goodbye. Night settled over the ranch, bringing the familiar sounds of crickets and distant coyotes. As he walked past the kitchen window, movement caught his eye. Amanda knelt alone by the hearth, her head bowed in prayer. The dying fire cast a gentle glow over her face, which held such peace despite the day's turmoil. Her lips moved silently, and Thomas found himself pausing in the shadows to watch. Something stirred in his heart, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. The simple faith in her posture, the quiet trust in her prayer, spoke more truly than any legal document could. For the first time since the sisters' arrival, Thomas felt a glimmer of hope breaking through his wall of doubt. He moved quietly away, leaving Amanda to her prayers. The night air felt cleaner somehow, as if a fresh wind had blown away some of the day's heavy clouds. While questions remained about the suspicious document and its origins, Thomas realized that truth might reveal itself in unexpected ways, not through legal papers, but through daily actions and quiet moments of faith. In his own room, Thomas found himself kneeling beside his bed, something he hadn't done since his wife died. The words came hesitantly at first, then with growing certainty as he asked for guidance in the days ahead. Outside his window, a whippoorwill called into the darkness, its song a reminder that even the longest night eventually yields to dawn. The days settled into a gentle rhythm at the Danner Ranch, like the steady beat of horse hooves on prairie grass. Each sunrise brought new tasks, and both sisters found their places in the daily dance of ranch life. In the kitchen, Amanda stood beside old Cookie, her flour-dusted hands guiding his weathered ones through the art of perfect pie crust. "The secret's in how gentle you are with the dough," she explained, demonstrating the delicate touch needed. Cookie's usual scowl softened as the smell of baking apples and cinnamon filled his domain. "Reckon, I never thought to add nutmeg," he admitted, watching her sprinkle the spice with careful precision. "Makes a difference, sure enough." Meanwhile, out behind the barn, Eliza lined up tin cans along the fence rail, her stance confident as she practiced with the ranch hands' rifles. Joe Martinez, Thomas's lead hand, nodded approvingly as she hit 3 cans in succession. "Mighty fine shooting, Miss Eliza," he said, adjusting her grip slightly. "Might make a rancher of you yet." Thomas watched these scenes unfold from his study window, pride and confusion warring in his chest. Both women brought such different gifts to his ranch, filling empty spaces he hadn't even known were there. But each trip to town brought fresh reminders of the cost. Heard Danner's keeping 2 wives out there, he overheard in the general store, the whispers falling silent as he rounded the corner with his supply list. "Ain't proper." Another voice muttered at the post office. Man ought to know his own mind. The gossip wore on him like summer dust, coating everything in a fine layer of discomfort. Sunday couldn't come soon enough. Though Thomas knew church would bring its own challenges, the morning dawned clear and cool, with dew sparkling on the grass as they hitched up the wagon. Amanda wore her best blue dress, while Eliza had managed to press her riding skirt into something suitable for worship. Thomas sat between them on the wagon seat, acutely aware of every eye that turned their way as they approached the white-painted church. Inside, the wooden pews creaked with the weight of speculation. Ladies fanned themselves, whispering behind him books. Men cleared their throats and looked sideways. Thomas felt his neck growing hot under his Sunday collar until Preacher Davidson stepped to the pulpit. Today, the preacher began, his voice filling the sunlit space. we examine the virtue of patience in seeking truth. His eyes swept the congregation. How quick we are to judge when God's wisdom unfolds in His own time. Thomas sat straighter, feeling the message sink into his troubled heart. Beside him, Amanda's hands clasped tightly in her lap, while Eliza's chin lifted slightly higher. After the service, the congregation spilled onto the church lawn for the traditional Sunday meal. Amanda immediately headed for the serving tables, where elderly Mrs. Peterson struggled with heavy pots of stew. "Let me help you with that," Amanda offered, taking the weight of the pot. Soon she was ladling out portions, making sure the older folks had seats in the shade and enough cornbread to sop up their stew. A delighted shriek drew Thomas's attention to where Eliza had gathered a crowd of children. She twirled her rope in complex patterns, creating shapes that had the little ones clapping with joy. "Look here," she called, forming a butterfly that seemed to flutter in the air. "Now who wants to try?" Soon she had a line of eager students, patiently teaching them simple tricks with small practice ropes. Their parents watched with mixed expressions, some smiling at their children's joy, others frowning at what they deemed unladylike behavior. The preacher's wife appeared at Thomas's elbow, following his gaze. "Those two bring such different lights to our community," she observed quietly. "Rather like the sun and moon, each with their own beauty." Thomas nodded, unable to find words for the warm ache in his chest as he watched both sisters in their elements, one nurturing, one teaching, both giving of themselves so naturally. The walk home stretched long in the gathering dusk. Thomas carried a lantern, its light swinging gently as they made their way down the rutted road. Cricket's song filled the evening air, and a cool breeze carried the scent of sage. Despite the day's earlier tensions, peace settled over them like a comfortable blanket. Amanda hummed a hymn from the service, while Eliza pointed out constellations appearing in the darkening sky. Thomas found himself smiling, drawn into their simple contentment. For just this moment, the weight of decision lifted from his shoulders. That feeling of harmony followed them home. Cookie had left soup warming on the stove, and they gathered around the kitchen table like family, sharing bread and quiet conversation about the day's events. "Did you see little Sarah's face when she made her first loop?" Eliza asked, eyes bright with pride for her student, almost as pleased as Mrs. Peterson was with your cornbread. Sister Amanda replied, smiling. Thomas watched them. These two women who had brought such unexpected life to his quiet ranch. The lamplight caught their identical features but highlighted their differences: Amanda's gentle grace, Eliza's sparking energy. How could he possibly? The sudden pounding on the door shattered the peaceful scene. "Express rider," a voice called. "Urgent business for Mr. Denner." Thomas opened the door to find a dust-covered rider holding out a leather document case. "From the Western Railroad Company, sir." Marked urgent. The comfortable warmth of the evening vanished as Thomas broke the official seal. His eyes scanned the formal language, his face growing darker with each line. "What is it?" Amanda asked softly. "The railroad?" Thomas's voice was tight. "They're claiming rights to Silver Creek, my main water source. Say they have a signed agreement from ... double quotes." He looked up, gaze moving between the sisters. "From one of you." "What?" Eliza stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "That's impossible." Amanda's face had gone pale. "We would never ... According to this," Thomas continued, "one of you met with their agent during your journey west, signed over water rights in exchange for ... double quotes." He swallowed hard. "For a guarantee of marriage." Silence fell heavy as a winter blanket. The lamp flickered, sending shadows dancing across shocked faces. All the trust built over these peaceful days seemed to waver like that flame. "Thomas." Amanda's voice was barely a whisper. "You must believe we wouldn't, must I?" The words came out harsher than he intended. "Seems there's a lot about you both I don't rightly know. Eliza stepped forward, her eyes flashing. That railroad's been trying to grab land all across the territory. You know their reputation. This is just another one of their tricks. But Thomas had rolled up the document, his face closed off. Tricks or truth, my water rights are now in question. Without Silver Creek, this ranch can't survive. He looked between them, and his next words fell like stones. And one of you may be responsible. The peaceful evening lay in ruins around them, like a fine china plate dashed against stone. Outside, a coyote wailed, a long, lonely sound that perfectly matched the ache in 3 troubled hearts. Morning lights sparkled off the well's metal crank as Thomas strode across the yard, the railroad's letter clenched in his weathered hand. Amanda and Eliza stood near the chicken coop, their matching faces turned toward him with concern. The spring breeze carried the scent of fresh-turned earth and the distant lowing of cattle. But Thomas barely noticed. I need straight answers, he said, holding up the wrinkled paper. Did either of you meet with a railroad agent during your journey west? No, Amanda said firmly, though her voice quivered. I spoke to no one except the stagecoach drivers and fellow passengers. Eliza shook her head, her eyes flashing. Same here. Thomas, you can't believe we'd do such a thing. Before Thomas could respond, the clatter of wheels drew their attention. A sleek black buggy rolled into the yard, pulled by a matched pair of bay horses that spoke of wealth and privilege. The man who stepped down wore an expensive suit that seemed untouched by trail dust. His polished boots gleamed in the morning sun. Mr. Danner, the railroad agent called, tipping his hat. Ladies, I trust you received my letter. His smile never reached his eyes as he pulled a leather folio from his coat. I have here a properly executed document signed by one of these charming young women, granting the Western Railroad Company rights to Silver Creek Spring. Thomas's jaw tightened. Show me. The agent's smile widened as he drew out several papers with flourishing gestures. Note the signature here, quite clear and properly witnessed. He held up the document, pointing to a flowing signature at the bottom. Several ranch hands had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Their whispers carried on the morning air. Reckon one of them girls sold us out, muttered Jake. The youngest hand. Hush now, old Pete warned. But his weathered face showed doubt. Amanda stepped forward, tears welling in her eyes as she looked at the paper. That's not my writing. I never signed anything, Thomas. I swear it. Of course you'd say that now, the agent said smoothly. He reached into his coat again. I'm authorized to offer you quite generous compensation, Mr. Danner. $5,000 for full rights to the spring. More than fair, considering it's already legally ours. Eliza surged forward, her fists clenched. You lying snake. She moved to strike him, but Thomas caught her arm. That's not the way, he said firmly, though his own hands itched to throw a punch. He turned to the agent. Get off my land. My lawyer will contact yours as you wish. The agent tucked his papers away, still wearing that oily smile. But do consider our offer. It would be ... unfortunate ... If we had to pursue this matter through less friendly channels, he climbed back into his buggy, the wheels throwing dust as he turned toward town. The morning's peace lay shattered. Thomas watched his hands return to their work, their shoulders tight with tension. He could feel the weight of their sideways glances, their whispered doubts. Amanda stood rooted in place, tears streaming down her face. You have to believe me, she whispered. I would never betray you like that. This ranch, these people, they've become family. Eliza paced like a caged mountain cat. It's forgery, plain and simple. That railroad's been trying to grab up water rights all over the territory. Everyone knows their tricks. Thomas wanted to believe them both. But the signature looked real enough, and the agent's confidence suggested he had more evidence hidden away. Without Silver Creek, his cattle would have no reliable water source. The ranch his father had built, that he'd promised to pass on to his own children someday, would wither away. The day dragged on, heavy with unspoken accusations. Amanda tried to busy herself in the kitchen, but her hands shook so badly she dropped a bowl of eggs. When Cookie tried to comfort her, she fled to her room in tears. Eliza took her fury out on fence posts. Hammering with such force, she split one clean through. The hands kept their distance, except for old Pete, who brought her water and a quiet word of encouragement. As evening approached, Thomas retreated to the barn. He sat on a hay bale, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles showed white. The familiar smells of leather and horse and fresh hay usually brought him peace, but not tonight. His father's words echoed in his memory. "Land's all we got, son. Without water, it's just dust in the wind. Lord," he whispered into the gathering shadows, "how can I keep faith when everything's falling apart?" A horse nickered softly, but no divine answer came. Up in their shared room, the sisters faced their own crisis of faith. Eliza paced while Amanda sat on the edge of her bed, twisting a handkerchief. "How dare they use us like this?" Eliza exploded. "Using our presence here to steal Thomas's water rights, it's despicable. But why would they target us?" Amanda's voice was hoarse from crying. "We're nothing to them, because we're convenient." Two mysterious women showing up. Claiming to be mail-order brides, it's the perfect cover for their scheme. Eliza kicked the dresser, then winced. "Thomas will never trust us now." Fresh tears spilled down Amanda's cheeks. "Everything we've built here, all the acceptance we've started to find, ... Stop it." Eliza whirled to face her sister. "Don't you let them win like this. We've faced worse together, haven't we? Have we?" Amanda stood, her own temper finally flaring. "When have we ever been accused of stealing a man's livelihood? Of betraying people who took us in and treated us like family? Back home, when Father died and those vultures tried to take everything that was different, we were innocent then, and everyone knew it. We're innocent now." Eliza grabbed her sister's shoulders. "Amanda, look at me. We can't let them drive us apart. That's exactly what they want." Amanda stared into her twin's face, her mirror image, yet so different in spirit. Her anger crumbled, and she pulled Eliza into a fierce embrace. They clung to each other as tears fell freely. "I'm sorry," Amanda whispered. "You're right. We have to stand together. No one breaks this bond," Eliza agreed, her voice thick with emotion. "Not railroad agents, not gossips, not even our own fears." They held each other until their tears dried, drawing strength from the connection they'd shared since the womb. Finally, Amanda stepped back and squared her shoulders. "We'll find a way to prove our innocence," she said firmly, "and expose that agent's lies." Eliza added with fierce determination, "In town." Unaware of this renewal of sisterly loyalty, the railroad agent sat in his hotel room reviewing his papers with satisfaction. A lamp cast his shadow large against the wall as he added fresh documents to his folio. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Tomorrow would bring new pressure to bear on the Danner Ranch. He held one paper up to the lamp, studying the forged signature with pride in his craftsmanship. Soon enough, Silver Creek's water would belong to the railroad, and no one would be able to prove otherwise. All he needed was to drive a few more wedges between these foolish settlers who put so much stock in trust and honor. The agent smiled as he began drafting his next letter, the scratch of his pen like the sound of a snake sliding through dry grass. Spring burst across the ranch in waves of green, bringing with it the bustle of branding season. Dawnlight found Amanda in the kitchen before the first roosters crow, kneading bread dough with flour-dusted hands. The scent of coffee and biscuits drew tired cowboys to her door like moths to flame. "Much obliged, Miss Amanda," old Pete said, accepting a steaming cup. Ain't had cooking this fine since my mama's kitchen. She smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. There's plenty more where that came from. Those cattle won't brand themselves. Out in the corrals, dust rose thick as morning fog. Calves bawled for their mothers while cowboys shouted and ropes whistled through the air. Thomas directed the operation from horseback, his voice carrying clear instruction across the yard. Eliza rode at his side, her skills with horse and rope drawing reluctant admiration from the hands. When a calf broke loose from the pen, she spurred her mount after it, swinging her loop with practiced grace. The throw landed true, and she brought the struggling animal back without breaking a sweat. "Well done," Thomas called, and something in his voice made her sit straighter in the saddle. Days flowed into weeks. Amanda's kitchen became the heart of the ranch, while Eliza proved herself on the range. They found their places naturally, like two streams joining a river. The hands stopped whispering behind their backs and started tipping their hats instead. But town was different. When Amanda stepped into the general store for supplies, conversations died like blown-out candles. Mrs. Peterson, usually so friendly, barely met her eyes while measuring cloth. "Heard tell that ranchers keeping both of you out there," someone muttered just loud enough to hear. "Ain't proper, if you ask me." Eliza faced the gossip with fierce defiance, but Amanda felt each whisper like a thorn in her heart. She saw how Thomas straightened his shoulders against the sideways glances, how his jaw tightened when passing the saloon where men snickered behind their hands. One Sunday morning, Thomas stood before his mirror, adjusting his string tie with unusual care. He'd spent the night in prayer, seeking clarity. Now, watching dawn paint his window gold, he felt God's peace settle over him like a warm blanket. The church picnic spread across the meadow behind the whitewashed building, quilts dotting the grass like fallen petals. Children played tag between the tables, while women arranged covered dishes and men gathered in clusters to discuss crops and cattle. Thomas approached Amanda as she helped the preachers. Wife arranged lemonade glasses. "Might we take a walk?" She glanced up, something soft and hopeful in her eyes. "I'd like that." They strolled beneath the cottonwoods, their leaves whispering secrets in the spring breeze. Amanda's blue calico dress brushed the tall grass, and Thomas found himself noticing how sunlight caught the gold in her hair. "I've been thinking," he said carefully, "about faith and choices." Amanda nodded, her steps matching his. Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that need the most faith. Back east, when I placed that advertisement, I prayed God would send the right person. Thomas paused, gathering his thoughts. When you both arrived, I couldn't understand his plan. But now, ... now. Her voice was soft as a dove's wing. Now I see his hand in it all. The way you've brought warmth back to this house. How your faith shines, even when folks gossip. The gentle way you handle everyone from cranky cowboys to scared calves. They stopped beneath a massive cottonwood, its branches spreading like sheltering arms. Amanda's eyes shone with unshed tears. "I've been praying too," she whispered. "For guidance, for truth to be revealed. I reckon maybe it has been." Bit by bit, Thomas took her hand, his rough fingers gentle against her smooth palm. "I've found my answer, Amanda. If you're willing, I'd like to court you proper, with marriage in mind." Joy bloomed across her face like sunrise. "Yes," she breathed. "Oh, yes." Back at the ranch that evening, Thomas gathered everyone in the main room. Lamplight caught the nervous happiness in Amanda's eyes as she stood beside him. Eliza sat near the window, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I've made my choice," Thomas announced, his voice steady. "I'm asking Amanda to be my wife." A moment of silence hung like dust motes in the lamplight. Then old Pete started clapping, and others joined in. Cookie wiped her eyes on her apron, and even the youngest hands managed congratulatory smiles. Eliza rose gracefully, crossed to her sister, and embraced her. "I'm happy for you," she said, her smile bright and brittle as new ice. Only Amanda felt the slight tremor in her twin's hands, saw the shadow of pain behind her brave face. Thomas outlined his plans for a simple church wedding within weeks. "Nothing fancy," he said, "but proper and blessed before God and community." The preacher, would come out to hear the announcement, nodded approvingly. "A wise decision, Thomas. We'll make it a celebration the whole town can share in." Later that night, Amanda found Eliza in the barn, methodically brushing her horse. The steady strokes couldn't quite hide the tension in her shoulders. "Eliza," Amanda started, but her sister shook her head. "Don't, please." Eliza kept brushing, her movements perhaps too firm. "I knew this would happen. One of us would be chosen, one would need to step aside. I'm glad it's you, truly. You'll make him a fine wife. You're hurting." "Course I am." Eliza finally turned, moonlight from the barn door silvering her tears. "But I won't let it poison your happiness. You deserve this, Amanda. You deserve love and stability and a good man's name." Amanda pulled her sister close, feeling the familiar heartbeat that had accompanied her own since before birth. "You deserve happiness too. I'll find my own way." Eliza managed a watery smile. "Maybe teaching those wild young ones in town. They seem to like my rope tricks well enough." They held each other in the quiet barn, their bonds stretched but unbroken. Outside, a coyote called to the rising moon, its song somehow both lonely and sweet. In his study, Thomas sat at his desk, pen hovering over paper as he began writing announcements to send back east. The lamp threw his shadow large against the wall as he chose his words carefully, with joy and gratitude. "I announce my engagement to Miss Amanda." He paused, looking out his window at the starlit ranch. Peace settled over him like a warm blanket. For the first time since the sisters' arrival, he felt certain of his path forward. The confusion and doubt of recent weeks faded before the simple rightness of his choice. Tomorrow would bring wedding preparations and new challenges. But tonight, faith had guided him home. The clatter of Amanda's sewing machine filled the preacher's parlor, its steady rhythm mixing with gentle conversation. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains, warming the wooden floor where fabric pooled like cream. The preacher's wife sat nearby in her rocking chair, expertly pinning lace to the bodice of Amanda's wedding dress. "Such fine work," the older woman murmured, adjusting a fold. "This dress will be a treasure to pass down someday." Amanda's cheeks flushed pink as she guided white cotton beneath the needle. "I hope so, though I never dreamed I'd be making it under such ... unusual circumstances. The Lord works in mysterious ways, dear." The preacher's wife secured another pin. "Sometimes the hardest paths lead to the sweetest blessings." Outside, the spring wind carried the sound of hammering from the ranch. Eliza worked alongside Thomas, her sleeves rolled up as they replaced rotting boards in the corral. Each strike of her hammer drove back thoughts of the upcoming wedding. "Mind those nails," Thomas cautioned as she lined up another board. "Don't want any proud ends catching horse flanks." "Yes, sir." Eliza checked her work carefully, grateful for tasks that kept her hands busy and her mind quiet. She'd always found peace in physical labor, in the honest ache of muscles and the satisfaction of repairs well done. The ranch hummed with preparation. Cookie baked test batches of wedding cake, filling the kitchen with the scent of vanilla and almond. Ranch hands whitewashed fences and cleared the yard of winter debris. Even old Pete polished his boots, determined to look proper for the ceremony. Sunday morning dawned clear and bright. The little church filled quickly, pews creaking under starched skirts and Sunday suits. Amanda sat beside Thomas in the front row, her gray cotton dress neat as a pin. Eliza chose a spot near the back, trying not to notice how natural they looked together. After the service, well-wishers surrounded the couple. Ladies clustered around Amanda, exclaiming over wedding plans. Men clapped Thomas on the back. Their earlier whispers replaced by genuine congratulations. "Such a lovely match," Mrs. Peterson declared, apparently forgetting her recent cold shoulders. "We'll all help make it a proper celebration." But not everyone shared the joy. Through the open church door, Eliza spotted the railroad agent lounging against a hitching post. His fancy suit and silver watch chain gleamed in the sun as he watched the congregation, a knowing smirk playing across his face. Thomas noticed him too. His jaw tightened as he drew Amanda closer to his side, a protective gesture that made Eliza's heart ache in complicated ways. Dark clouds gathered that afternoon, matching Eliza's mood as she helped Amanda unpin her hair. They sat in their shared room, the familiar ritual comfortable despite everything changed between them. "I never properly thanked you," Amanda said softly, meeting her sister's eyes in the mirror, "for being so gracious about ... All of this, Eliza's hands stilled for a moment. "You don't need to thank me. We're sisters first, always will be." Still, Amanda caught her twin's hand, squeezing gently. "I know it's not been easy. Nothing worth doing ever is." Eliza managed to smile, resuming her work with the hairpins. "Besides, I've been thinking, maybe I could do some real good here, even without a ring. Those children in town need proper schooling, and I reckon I could teach them more than just rope tricks." "You'd make a wonderful teacher." Amanda's voice warmed with genuine enthusiasm. "You've always had a way with little ones." Thunder rolled in the distance as Eliza gathered her sister's long hair into a simple braid. "We'll find our own paths, like we always have. Just because they're different doesn't mean they can't run parallel, like wagon tracks," Amanda offered, their old childhood metaphor bringing tears to both their eyes. "Exactly like wagon tracks." Eliza tied off the braid with a ribbon. Side by side, even when they don't touch. The storm broke in earnest as night fell. Rain lashed against the windows while wind moaned through the eaves. The sisters sat together in the lamplight, sharing the quiet comfort of presence while nature raged outside. Lightning flashed, illuminating their room in stark white bursts. During one such flash, Eliza glimpsed something through the window that made her blood run cold. The railroad agent's distinctive buggy. Parked on the ridge overlooking the ranch, she said nothing, not wanting to trouble Amanda's happiness, but she watched the window carefully, counting the seconds between lightning and thunder, trying to convince herself the buggy had been a trick of light and shadow. Another flash proved her wrong. The agent sat in his buggy, barely visible through the curtain of rain, patient as a wolf watching a flock, sure of his eventual meal. The sight sent a shiver down Eliza's spine that had nothing to do with the storm's chill. Amanda noticed her sister's tension. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Eliza lied, turning away from the window. "Just the storm making me jumpy." But they both knew storms weren't what troubled the ranch. The agent's presence was like poison in a well, tainting everything it touched. His smirk at the church, his waiting buggy on the ridge. They spoke of schemes yet to unfold. Thunder cracked overhead, making the lamp flame jump. Amanda drew closer to her sister, their shoulders touching like when they were girls sharing secrets and fears. "Whatever comes," Amanda whispered, "we'll face it together." Eliza nodded, her throat too tight for words. Outside, the storm continued its assault, rain drumming on the roof like impatient fingers. Lightning flashed again, but this time the ridge stood empty. The agent's buggy gone as mysteriously as it had appeared. Yet its absence brought no comfort. Like the storm itself, they all knew this was merely a pause, a gathering of forces before the next attack. The agent would return, bringing with him challenges that would test not just the sisters' bond, but the very foundations of trust and faith that Thomas's ranch was built upon. For now, though, they had this moment. Two sisters in the lamplight. Their love stronger than any storm. Amanda's wedding dress hung in the corner, white as hope, while Eliza's plans for teaching took root in her heart like seeds waiting for spring. Different paths, but parallel, stretching toward horizons yet unknown. The afternoon before the wedding dawned golden and full of promise. Amanda stood at the kitchen window, kneading bread dough while watching butterflies dance through the garden she had planted. Her wedding dress hung pristine in the bedroom upstairs, every stitch sewn with prayers and dreams. Even the weather seemed to smile on tomorrow's ceremony, with clear skies and gentle breezes carrying the scent of wild roses. That serenity shattered when hoofbeats thundered into the yard. The railroad agent's buggy pulled up in a cloud of dust, his patent leather shoes gleaming as he stepped down. Two other men flanked him, carrying leather document cases. "Where's Mr. Danner?" The agent called out, his voice carrying the false sweetness of poisoned honey. "We have urgent business to discuss." Amanda's hands trembled as she wiped them on her apron. Through the window, she watched Thomas emerge from the barn, his expression darkening at the sight of their visitors. "What business?" Thomas demanded, keeping his distance. The agent's smile widened as he withdrew papers from his case. "Why? The matter of your spring. According to these documents, signed by your bride-to-be during her journey west, the water rights now belong to the railroad." "That's impossible," Thomas growled. "Show me these supposed papers." The agent held them out with a flourish. There, stark against the cream-colored page, was Amanda's signature, or what appeared to be her signature. Thomas's face went ashen as he studied it. Word spread through town like wildfire. By mid-afternoon, the Silver Creek Saloon buzzed with accusations and speculation. Men gathered around tables, passing the documents hand to hand, comparing the signature to old letters. Amanda had written to the general store. "Looks mighty similar," the blacksmith muttered, holding a page up to the light. "Always thought there was something peculiar about those twins," someone else added. "Two of them showing up like that. Ain't natural." The agent worked the crowd masterfully, buying rounds of drinks while dropping hints about other cases of mail-order bride schemes. With each whisper, each suspicious glance, the web of doubt grew tighter. Back at the ranch, Amanda sat rigid at the kitchen table while Eliza paced like a caged mountain lion. "It's forgery, plain and simple," Eliza insisted. "You never signed anything." "Of course I didn't." Amanda's voice cracked. "But how do we prove it?" The answer came in the form of more bad news. The preacher arrived as evening shadows lengthened, his usually cheerful face grave. In his hands he carried the mysterious marriage contract that had surfaced weeks ago. The one claiming one sister was already bound in matrimony. The lawyer who drafted "This has been found," the preacher said heavily. "He's willing to testify to its authenticity, but it's false." Eliza slammed her hand on the table. "That lawyer tried swindling my old employer. He's as crooked as a mountain trail." The preacher sighed, settling his weight into a kitchen chair. "I believe you, girls. But with these documents surfacing and the timing of it all, he turned to Thomas, who stood like stone by the fireplace. "I cannot in good conscience perform the ceremony tomorrow. Not until this matter is settled legally." Amanda's world tilted sideways. "But the guests, the preparations, will have to wait," the preacher finished gently. "I'm sorry, but my duty is to God and the law." Thunder rumbled outside, matching the storm brewing in Thomas's eyes. He had not spoken since the preacher's arrival, but now he turned to Amanda, his voice rough with pain. "Did you sign those papers?" he demanded. "Did you sell my spring out from under me?" "Thomas, no." Amanda rose, reaching for him. I would never then explain how your signature got there. His control cracked like spring ice. Explain these contracts, these lawyers, all these complications that followed you both here. She's telling the truth. Eliza stepped between them, fierce as a mother bear. Someone's trying to steal your land? Can't you see that? They're using us to do it. But Thomas was beyond hearing. Weeks of doubt, of whispers and suspicious glances, of trying to trust when his heart warned him otherwise, came crashing down like a mudslide. Without another word, he grabbed his coat and stormed out into the gathering storm. Thomas, please. Amanda ran after him, heedless of the rain now falling. Please listen. The door slammed behind him. The sound of hoofbeats faded into the drumming rain. Amanda stood in the middle of the kitchen, her world dissolving like sugar in hot coffee. Her legs gave way, and she would have fallen if Eliza hadn't caught her. I've lost him, Amanda sobbed into her sister's shoulder. I've lost everything. Not everything. Eliza's arms tightened around her twin. You've still got me. We'll fight this together, just like we always have. They sank to the floor together, holding each other as they had through every storm of their lives. The ranch's warmth seemed to leach away with Thomas's departure, leaving only hollow spaces where happiness had lived that morning. Cookie appeared silently, setting 2 cups of hot tea nearby. The old cook's weathered face showed his own grief at the family's shattering. One by one, the lamps were lit against the darkness. But their glow seemed dimmer now, as if the very light mourned with them. What do we do? Amanda whispered finally, her tears spent. Eliza stroked her sister's hair, her jaws set with determination. We prove the truth. That agent and his pet lawyer won't destroy what we've built here. I won't let them. But Amanda barely heard. Her eyes fixed on her wedding dress, hanging like a ghost in the corner. All those careful stitches, all those prayers sewn into every seam. Now it would never be worn. Tomorrow's joy had turned to ashes in her mouth, leaving only the bitter taste of betrayal. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, 2 sisters clung to each other in the fading lamplight, their future as uncertain as the darkness beyond the windows. The ranch, which had finally begun to feel like home, now felt as empty as a church after the congregation has gone. The only sound was the rain. And Amanda's quiet prayers whispered into the night like seeds cast on barren ground, hoping against hope that somewhere, somehow, truth would take root and grow. Gray dawn crept over Silver Creek Ranch, painting the hills in shadowy tones that matched Thomas Danner's mood. He saddled his horse in silence, avoiding the concerned looks from his ranch hands. The leather creaked beneath him as he swung up, heading out alone across his land while first light touched the spring-fed streams his late wife had loved so dearly. The morning air carried memories of Sarah, her delight in wildflowers, her quiet strength during drought years, her faith that this land was their calling. Thomas pulled his horse up short near the mainspring, watching water bubble from earth that had sustained 3 generations of his family. The railroad agent's offer echoed in his mind. Enough money to live comfortable anywhere else, free from doubt and scandal. His fingers traced the worn saddle horn where Sarah's hand had often rested. What would you tell me to do? He whispered, but only the wind answered back at the ranch house. Amanda sat motionless by the window, her wedding dress still hanging like an accusation in the corner. The smell of breakfast wafted up from the kitchen, but she turned away when Cookie brought a tray. Now, Miss Amanda, you need your strength, the old cook urged, setting down biscuits and eggs. I cannot eat, Amanda whispered, her voice rough from crying. The shame of it all, ... She pressed her hands to her face, shoulders trembling. Cookie's weathered face creased with concern. Ain't no shame in being wronged. Miss, Truth's bound to come out somehow. But Amanda only shook her head, lost in the fog of despair. The food grew cold, untouched as morning wore on. Eliza, however, had no patience for waiting. She stormed into the barn, startling the stable boy with her fierce expression. "Saddle my horse," she ordered, strapping on her father's old gun belt. "I aim to have words with that railroad snake." The ride into Silver Creek took less than an hour at her determined pace. Townsfolk scattered from her path as she dismounted outside the hotel where the railroad agent had taken rooms. She found him in the dining room, leisurely enjoying his morning coffee. "Well, if it isn't the other Miss Wilson," he drawled, barely glancing up. "Come to make a scene." "Come to warn you," Eliza replied, her voice steel-edged. "Whatever game you're playing with those forged papers, it ends now." The agent's smile never wavered, but his eyes turned cold. "Careful, girl. Accusations of fraud are serious matters. Wouldn't want to damage your reputation further, or your sister's. You don't scare me." Eliza shot back, though her heart pounded. "I know you're behind this whole scheme. Prove it." He dabbed his lips with a napkin, perfectly composed. "But consider this, even if you could prove forgery, who would believe you now? Two mysterious sisters, appearing from nowhere, bringing chaos to a respectable rancher's life." He leaned forward. "Keep quiet and leave town quietly. Otherwise, I'll make sure neither of you ever finds peace anywhere in this territory." Eliza's hands clenched, but she forced herself to stay still, studying his desk. Papers lay scattered across it. And something caught her eye. The handwriting on his personal notes matched the style on the suspicious contracts. The same elaborate loops, the same distinctive slant. "Good day, Mr. Agent," she said finally, backing away. Her mind was already racing ahead, forming a plan. The ride home gave her time to think. The agent's arrogance would be his undoing. He had kept evidence of his own forgery right there in plain sight. Now she just needed proof, and a way to expose him before Thomas sold the ranch. She found Amanda still by the window, looking more ghost than woman. "Sister," Eliza said firmly, taking her hands. "Enough of this sorrow. We have work to do." Amanda lifted dull eyes. "What's left to do?" "Thomas believes the worst of us. He believes lies," Eliza insisted. "But I saw something today. That agent, he wrote those forged papers himself. His handwriting gives him away. We just need to prove it." A spark of interest flickered in Amanda's face. "How remember when we worked for Judge Morton back east? How he taught us about document verification." Eliza's eyes gleamed. "If we can get samples of the agent's writing, compare them to the contracts, ... we could expose the forgery," Amanda finished, sitting straighter. Hope began to replace despair in her expression. "Exactly." Eliza squeezed her sister's hands. "But first, you need to eat. We can't fight corruption on an empty stomach." For the first time that day, Amanda managed a weak smile. She allowed Eliza to guide her downstairs, where Cookie immediately began warming up breakfast. The afternoon passed in quiet planning. The sisters gathered writing samples from the general store where the agent had signed for supplies. They studied the original contracts, marking suspicious similarities in letter formation and ink type. As evening approached, hoofbeats announced Thomas's return. He walked into the house looking grim, his face lined with exhaustion. Amanda stepped forward, but he held up a hand. "Don't," he said roughly. "I've made my decision. The railroad's offer is fair. Better to sell than live with ... double quotes." He stopped, unable to voice his doubts. "Thomas, please," Amanda began, but he cut her off. "I'll sign the papers tomorrow." His voice was final. "Best start packing your things." The sisters exchanged glances, heavy with determination. They had one night to save everything: the ranch, their reputation, and Thomas's trust. Tomorrow may bring surprises, Eliza said quietly, but Thomas had already turned away. Heading for his study, Amanda watched him go, her heart aching. But the despair of mourning had been replaced by resolution. She looked at her sister and nodded. Together, they would uncover the truth. They had to, before it was too late, in his study. Thomas stared at Sarah's portrait above the mantel, wondering if he was betraying everything they had built. Outside, the sun set behind storm clouds, painting the sky in shades of amber and gray. Change was coming to Silver Creek Ranch, but whether for good or ill remained to be seen. The sisters worked late into the night, comparing documents by lamplight, building their case against the railroad agent. Their determination cast long shadows on the walls. While somewhere in town, a corrupt man slept easy. Unaware that two women were about to unravel his careful scheme, dawn painted silver. Creek's Main Street in soft pastels as Amanda and Eliza Wilson stepped from their borrowed wagon. Heads turned, and whispers followed them like shadows. Amanda clutched her shawl tighter, but Eliza squared her shoulders. Meeting the stairs with quiet dignity. "Remember what Papa always said?" Eliza murmured. "Truth fears no scrutiny." Amanda nodded, drawing strength from her sister's presence. Together, they made their way to the telegraph office, boots clicking against the wooden sidewalk. The operator, Mr. Jenkins, looked up nervously as they entered. The bell above the door announcing their presence. "Message to send east." "If you please," Eliza said, sliding a carefully written note across the counter. The wire would go to Judge Morton's clerk, requesting verification of the lawyer's past dealings. Mr. Jenkins counted out the words, named his price. Coins clinked as Eliza paid, while Amanda watched through the window as townsfolk hurried past. Avoiding eye contact, it might take a day for reply, Jenkins warned. Already tapping out the message. "We'll wait," Eliza assured him. The sisters settled on a bench outside, determined to be visible, yet dignified. Later, at the general store, Amanda sorted through sewing supplies while straining to hear the clerk's conversation with Mrs. Peterson. Her patience was rewarded. When the young man's voice carried clearly from behind the counter, "Truth is, ma'am, that railroad fellow paid me $5 to spread those stories about the sisters. Said it would help his business dealings." He sounded ashamed. Been feeling mighty low about it since. Amanda's hands trembled on the fabric she held. But she forced herself to move naturally, memorizing every word. Evening found them at the boarding house, sharing a simple supper of beef stew and cornbread. The telegraph clerk burst in, waving a yellow paper. "Message for Miss Wilson." Eliza read it aloud in their room, voice trembling with excitement. "Lawyer Harrison disbarred last spring. Multiple counts, forgery proven. Warning issued all territories. Stop." Amanda pressed her hands together in prayer. "Thank you, Lord," she whispered. "It's not enough yet," Eliza cautioned. "We need local proof, too." The next morning, they began their rounds. The store clerk signed a statement about the agent's bribe. The livery stable owner testified to overhearing threats. Even the saloon keeper admitted the agent had boasted of managing troublesome landowners. The church. The preacher's wife listened to their evidence, her kind face growing stern. "That man has brought nothing but discord to our community," she declared. "I'll stand with you girls before the town council." It's time someone spoke up. Her support brought tears to Amanda's eyes. "Thank you," she managed. "Sometimes the Lord's truth needs brave hearts to defend it," the older woman said, squeezing their hands. "You've shown real courage, both of you." They left the church walking taller. A small bundle of signed statements tucked safely in Eliza's satchel. Each signature represented someone willing to stand against corruption, to choose truth over convenient lies. Word of the sisters' investigation spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. Folks gathered in clusters outside the general store, sharing what they knew. The railroad agent paced the hotel porch, his polished boots wearing a path in the weathered boards. That afternoon, he cornered Thomas near the livery stable. $5,000, he whispered, pressing close. Just drop this foolishness and sell. Why defend women who've brought you nothing but trouble? Thomas's jaw tightened, but uncertainty flickered in his eyes. The money would ease his burdens, end the gossip. Later that evening, Amanda found Thomas in his study. Lamplight caught the tears on her cheeks as she laid out the gathered evidence-signed statements. The telegraph about the corrupt lawyer. Witnesses' accounts of bribes. "I've never lied to you, Thomas," she said softly. "My trust is in the Lord, and He knows my heart." Thomas studied her face, years of loneliness warring with hope. "Prove it one last time," he said. In front of everyone. The next morning, the church bell rang out across town. People filled the pews as the preacher called the meeting to order. Amanda and Eliza stood together, their voices clear as they presented their case. One by one, townsfolk rose to confirm their stories. The agent's face turned red, then white. He bolted for the door, but crashed into the blacksmith's broad chest. The sheriff stepped forward, iron cuffs gleaming. "Reckon you'll be explaining these forgeries to the territorial judge," the sheriff said. Securing the agent's wrists, justice had come to Silver Creek at last. Thomas rode hard toward home, his heart heavy with shame. The setting sun painted the ranch in golden light as he dismounted near the garden. There, he found Amanda on her knees among the sprouting vegetables, her lips moving in silent prayer. Her eyes opened as his shadow fell across the dirt. Without a word, Thomas knelt beside her in the soft earth. "I was wrong to doubt you," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Can you forgive my lack of faith?" Amanda's eyes welled with tears. "The Lord teaches us mercy," she whispered. "Then Mary meets Rully this time." With trust restored. "Yes," she breathed. Joy breaking across her face like sunrise. From the porch, Eliza watched, wiping her own tears with her apron. Her smile, though bittersweet, was genuine. That evening, laughter rang through the kitchen as they shared a celebratory supper. The preacher arrived with welcome news the wedding would proceed within days. Held in the freshly swept barn. Later, the sisters embraced. "Nothing will break our bond," Amanda promised. "Nothing," Eliza agreed, holding her twin close. The barn glowed with the warm light of dozens of lanterns, transforming the familiar space into something magical. Sweet-smelling hay and wildflowers decorated every beam and post. Neighbors filled the makeshift pews, their Sunday best brightening the rustic scene, as the first notes of Amazing Grace filled the air. Thomas stood tall beside the preacher, his eyes fixed on the barn doors. Amanda appeared, radiant in her white dress, while Eliza led the children's choir in harmony. The preacher's words rang clear as Thomas and Amanda joined hands. "What God has brought together, let no man put asunder." "There I doze" echoed against the rafters, followed by cheers and happy tears when they kissed. Eliza beamed from her place among the children, her own joy complete as she shared her plans to open a schoolhouse with the preacher's wives. Guidance under the stars later, the sisters embraced. "You've found your path," Amanda whispered. "And you've found yours," Eliza replied, squeezing her hand. "We each have our calling now." Inside, fiddle music swirled as couples danced across the swept wooden floor. Thomas held Amanda close, marveling at how God had turned confusion into clarity, scandal into celebration. The ranch, once echoing with loneliness, now overflowed with family, faith, and the sweet sound of laughter. Thank you for watching. If this one reached you, consider subscribing. I'll be back tomorrow with more meaning, more humanity.